Welcome to the home of forbidden love stories. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. I lost our child the same night you told the world I never mattered. Chapter 1. The signature scent of imprisonment. They say an Omega's wedding day should smell like jasmine and joy. Mine reeked of alpha pheromones and my own fear. My hands trembled as I lifted the ornate fountain pen, its weight somehow both insignificant and crushing. The marriage certificate spread before me like a death warrant, all gold-embossed edges and legal terminology that boiled down to one simple truth. I was being sold. 500 million won of family debt, erased in exchange for my signature. For me, the Grand Hyatt's crystal ballroom sparkled around us, every surface reflecting light until I felt dizzy. Or maybe that was the suppressants I'd choked down this morning, trying desperately to muffle my lavender scent. It didn't matter. I could still smell him, cedar and steel, cold and cutting, deliberately oppressive. Noh Kyung-tae stood beside me in his black Tom Ford suit, tall and sharp-edged as broken glass, and didn't so much as glance my way as I signed my life over to him. The officiant's voice droned on. I focused on breathing, on not vomiting onto my borrowed white hanbok. This was supposed to be beautiful, sacred. Instead, it felt like drowning in expensive fabric. When the officiant announced we could seal the union with a kiss, Kyung-tae's dark eyes finally met mine. They held nothing, no warmth, no curiosity, just flat contempt, like I was something unpleasant he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. He gave the barest nod, a movement so curt the photographer almost missed it, and turned away. No kiss. No touch. Just that single acknowledgement that yes, the contract had been signed. Survive first. Feel later. Jire's whispered words from this morning echoed in my skull. My brother had held my face between his hands in our cramped apartment, his own Omega scent sharp with protective fury. 2 years. You survive 2 years, the debt is cleared, and you come home to me. Promise me you'll survive. I'd promised. But as I stood there in front of 300 Chable guests, their collective alpha pheromones making my skin crawl, I wondered what survival would cost. The reception blurred into nightmare. Kyung-tae moved through the crowd like he owned it, because he did, in a way. No industry's executives, shareholders, politicians, all of them alphas or powerful betas, all of them treating me like furniture. I caught fragments of their whispers between champagne flutes and canapes. The charity case Omega. Can't believe matriarch Noh forced this match. How long before he shows his true colors? They always do. I stood alone by the gift table, forcing down sparkling water, willing myself invisible. Kyung-tae held court across the ballroom, laughing at some alpha's joke, his whole body angled away from me. As if I didn't exist. As if we hadn't just been legally bound. A weathered hand touched mine, startling me. Matriarch Noh, Kyung-tae's grandmother, the architect of this arrangement, stood beside me, her eyes kind despite her age-spotted severity. Give him time, she said softly, squeezing my fingers. That boy's heart is a fortress built on graves. Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Hours later, I stood in the bedroom of Kyung-tae's Gangnam penthouse, still in my hanbok frozen. The door opened. He entered, loosening his tie, and without a word tossed a bottle of pills at my feet. They scattered across the marble like tiny white tombstones. Take these, he said, his voice arctic. I don't want your scent contaminating my space. You're a contract, not a partner. Don't forget it. The door to his separate bedroom clicked shut behind him. I stared at the suppressants scattered around my feet and understood. This was my wedding night. This silence. This emptiness. This was my life now. Chapter 2. The Fortress of Glass and Ice. Kyung-tae had learned early that Omegas wore innocence like perfume, and both were designed to deceive. He woke at 5:30, alone in his minimalist bedroom, and was at his desk by 6 with merger documents spread before him like battle plans. The penthouse was silent. Good. The Omega, Yeon-woo, he supposed he should use the name, was likely still asleep in the guest room. Out of sight. Out of mind. Exactly as it should be. Except Kyung-tae's concentration kept fracturing, his mind dragging him back 20 years to a memory he'd buried under concrete and steel. Age 10. Standing in the hallway of their old estate, watching his Omega father Noh Kyung-woo stuff clothes into a suitcase, a beta man waiting by the door. His mother's voice, shrill with betrayal, screaming from her bedroom. You promised you loved me. You promised. His father's response, cold as winter. I loved your money, Sunhwa. Not you. 3 days later, his mother swallowed a bottle of pills. Kyung-tae found her. He'd learned the lesson carved into his bones. Omegas were beautiful traps. They used their sense, their supposed vulnerability, their heat-sweetened words to manipulate alphas into submission. Then they took everything and left corpses behind. At Noh Industries headquarters, he moved through the day with mechanical precision. During the quarterly review, his Omega secretary Park Min-young made an error in the presentation. Transposed 2 numbers. When he corrected her, she teared up, scent going saccharine with distress. "I'm so sorry, Director Noh, I didn't mean." "You're fired," he said flatly. "Effective immediately." The room went silent. Min-young's face crumpled. "But it was just a mistake, Emotional manipulation won't work on me. Security will escort you out." Later, in his private office, Dong-ail cornered him. His beta friend had known him since university, which meant he was one of the few people who dared push back. "You married that Omega yesterday. You could at least speak to him." Kyung-tae didn't look up from his tablet. "I married a debt. Nothing more. He's a person, Kyung-tae. He's a contract with a pulse. Drop it." But Dong-ail's words followed him home like ghosts. The penthouse smelled different when he entered at 8:30. Not the sterile, air-purified emptiness he preferred, but something softer. Lavender. Rain on spring grass. Despite the suppressants he'd forced on the Omega, the scent lingered like morning mist. He found Yeon-woo in the kitchen, setting 2 plates on the dining table. Simple food, rice, soup, grilled mackerel. The Omega looked up, and for a moment something flickered in those dark eyes. Hope, maybe. It died quickly when Kyung-tae didn't acknowledge the gesture. Kyung-tae sat, ate in silence. The food was good, better than good, actually seasoned with care he didn't want to notice. Across from him, Yeon-woo picked at his own meal, scent going flat with something that might have been resignation. When Kyung-tae finished, he stood without a word and retreated to his home office. Alone, he tried to work. Failed. That scent kept haunting him. Lavender, yes, but underneath it something cleaner. Honest, almost. Not the cloying sweetness his father had weaponized. Not the artificial perfumes other Omegas doused themselves in. Why didn't it trigger his disgust? He pulled up the security feed almost unconsciously, telling himself it was protocol. The living room camera showed Yeon-woo on the couch, knees drawn to his chest, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. No sound. No theatrics. Just quiet, devastated grief. Kyung-tae watched for 10 minutes, his chest tightening with something he refused to name. Then he forced himself to close the window, shut down his computer, and retreat to his bedroom. But sleep wouldn't come, because he kept seeing Yeon-woo's face in the kitchen, that brief flash of hope before it shattered. And he kept wondering why it bothered him at all. Chapter 3. Sketches of a Ghost. I became a ghost in his house, silent, invisible, haunting only the margins. 2 weeks into this marriage that wasn't a marriage, I'd learned the choreography of avoidance. Wake at 5 before Kyung-tae's alarm. Shower in the guest bathroom, take my suppressants, eat a quiet breakfast while he slept. By the time he emerged, perfectly pressed and coldly handsome, I'd already disappeared into the study at the end of the hall. He never entered that room. I realized it after the 3rd day. He treated it like Omega territory, some invisible boundary he refused to cross. So it became mine. My refuge. The one place in this glass and marble prison where I could breathe. I drew to keep from drowning. Freelance illustration work paid poorly, but it kept my hands busy and my mind occupied. My current project, a webtoon about a songbird trapped in a golden cage, felt too on the nose, but my editor loved it. The bird dreamed of flight in every panel, wings spread against the bars, eyes fixed on a sky it couldn't reach. I understood that bird down to my bones. Leave him. Jire's face filled my laptop screen during our weekly video call, his Omega scent coming through so fierce I could almost smell the ginger citrus of his fury. You don't owe this alpha your soul, Yeon-woo. I owe him 2 years, I said quietly. The contract. Fuck the contract. He treats you like furniture. 500 million won, Jire. My voice cracked. That's what our parents' debt cost. 2 years of my life, or the rest of yours in poverty. I made my choice. My brother's expression crumpled. We both knew I was right. We both hated it. After the call, I lost myself in sketching. Not the webtoon. Something private. Personal. My pencil moved across the paper almost without thought. An alpha's broad shoulders, an Omega cradled against his chest, faces blurred but bodies intertwined with impossible tenderness. The Omega had lavender flowers woven through his hair. Fantasy. Pathetic fantasy. I didn't hear Kyung-tae enter the study. Didn't realize he was there until his sharp intake of breath cut through my concentration. I looked up to find him in the doorway, still in his work clothes, his dark eyes fixed on my sketchbook. On the drawing of something we'd never be. Heat crawled up my neck. I should have closed the book. Should have hidden it. But something stubborn in me refused. You draw fantasies, he said finally, his voice cold as winter steel. Pathetic. The word hit like a slap. 2 weeks of silence, of swallowing every hurt, every lonely dinner, every night I'd cried myself to sleep. It all came boiling up my throat. At least I still believe in something. I heard myself say, my voice shaking but steady. You're just a scared child in an expensive suit. The air went electric. Kyung-tae's pheromones spiked so sharply I flinched, my Omega instincts screaming at me to submit, to apologize, to bare my throat. But I forced myself to hold his gaze, to stay upright even as my hands trembled. His jaw clenched. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Rage, yes, but underneath it something rawer. Something that looked almost like pain. You know nothing about me, he said, each word precisely cut. Then tell me something, I challenged. Anything. Prove you're more than ice and cruelty. For a heartbeat, I thought he might. His mouth opened. His hand lifted slightly, as if reaching for something he couldn't name. Then he turned and walked away. The door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. My sketchbook tumbled from the desk, pages fluttering as it hit the floor. It landed open to a sketch I'd done yesterday. Just words in careful calligraphy, surrounded by dying roses. What if the monster is just a broken prince? I stared at it and laughed bitterly. What if he was? Would it even matter? Chapter 4. The Crack in the Armor. The Omega's words lodged in his chest like glass shards. Kyung-tae sat through the quarterly board meeting barely hearing a word. Revenue projections, market expansion, merger timelines. All of it washed over him like static. Instead, he kept hearing Yeon-woo's voice, shaking but defiant. You're just a scared child in an expensive suit. Director Noh? The CFO's voice cut through his thoughts. Your opinion on the Q2 forecast? Kyung-tae blinked, realized everyone was staring. He bullshitted his way through an answer, but Dong-ail's eyes narrowed from across the table. After the meeting, his friend cornered him in the hallway. You're obsessing over him. I'm not. You checked your phone 7 times. You haven't heard a word anyone said. Careful, Kyung-tae. That's how it starts. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. His grandmother, summoning him to her estate. Not a request. A command. He found her in the sunroom, frail but imperious in her wheelchair, surrounded by orchids she'd cultivated for 50 years. Sit, she ordered. Kyung-tae sat. Your mother was my daughter, she said without preamble. I watched her love your father so desperately it destroyed her. I won't let her son die hollow and hateful like she did. Her gnarled fingers gripped his hand with surprising strength. That Omega has a pure heart, Kyung-tae. Let him thaw you before you freeze to death. You don't understand. I understand you're punishing an innocent boy for your father's sins. I understand you're so afraid of becoming your mother that you've become something worse. Someone who inflicts her pain on others. He left without another word, her accusation chasing him into the street. The cafe smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon, warm and inviting in a way Kyung-tae's penthouse never was. I sat across from Jang Woo-bin, an alpha art director I'd connected with through a freelance platform, discussing a commission for his company's rebranding campaign. He was kind. Actually kind. Not tolerating me, not ignoring me, but genuinely interested in my work. Your line work is exceptional, Woo-bin said, studying my portfolio on his tablet. There's real emotion here. Vulnerability. He looked up, smiling. Rare to find an artist who isn't afraid to feel. Heat crept up my neck. Not embarrassment, but something warmer. Being seen. When I shifted in my seat, he paused, scent receptors flaring slightly. Your scent is lovely, he said casually, respectfully. Like rain on spring petals. Whoever bonded you is lucky. My throat tightened. It's complicated. The good things usually are. His smile was sympathetic, not pitying. We talked for another hour. About art, about inspiration, about nothing and everything. When we parted ways, he shook my hand like I mattered. I floated home on that feeling, lighter than I'd been in weeks. Until I opened the penthouse door and found Kyung-tae waiting in the foyer, still in his suit, expression dark as thunderclouds. You smell like another alpha, he said, voice dangerously quiet. The lightness evaporated. I straightened my spine, met his glare. Would you even care? Something flashed in his eyes, hot and possessive and utterly irrational. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides, grabbed my wrist, his cedar steel pheromones spiking so aggressively I gasped. His thumb pressed against my pulse point, feeling it race. "Don't," he started, voice rough. "Don't what?" I challenged, even as my Omega instincts screamed. "Don't exist outside these walls? Don't speak to people who actually see me as human." His grip tightened. For a heartbeat, I thought he might pull me closer. Might finally say something real. Instead, he released me like I'd burned him and stalked away, disappearing into his office without a word. I stood there, wrist tingling where he'd touched me, and realized something terrifying. He did care. He just didn't know what to do with it. Kyung-tae stood outside Yeon-woo's bedroom door at 2 a.m, hand raised to knock. To what? Apologize? Explain? Demand the Omega never see that alpha again? Through the door, he heard soft breathing. Imagined Yeon-woo curled in bed, lavender scent lingering on the sheets, and his whole body ached with want he couldn't name. His hand hovered over the knob for an hour before he finally retreated to his own cold, empty room. Chapter 5. The Storm That Binds. Heat comes like a thief, stealing logic, leaving only need. It hit me in the afternoon, 3 weeks too early, vicious and sudden as a knife between the ribs. One moment I was sketching at my desk, the next I was on the floor, skin on fire, suppressants failing catastrophically under the weight of accumulated stress. My body had finally rebelled against everything I'd forced it to endure. I crawled to my bedroom, locked the door, buried myself under blankets that felt like sandpaper against hypersensitive skin. But there was no hiding from this. My lavender rain scent flooded the penthouse, thick and desperate, a biological beacon I couldn't suppress. Time fractured. Minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. I was burning, drowning, dying. The door exploded inward, lock shattering. Through my fever haze I saw him. Kyung-tae, pupils blown wide, chest heaving, his alpha instincts roaring to life in response to my pheromones. He looked feral. Terrified. "Please," I heard myself whimper, too far gone for pride. "Please don't leave me alone in this." Whatever control he'd been clinging to shattered like glass. He gathered me up, and his cedar steel scent wrapped around me like an anchor. Cool cloths on my forehead. Water pressed to my lips. His hands, impossibly gentle, smoothing back my sweat-soaked hair. I clung to him, trembling, and he held me through the worst of it, scent marking my wrists, my throat, my hair, territorial and protective and utterly overwhelmed. "I wanted you to choose me," I whispered in my delirium, truth spilling out uncensored. "Not be forced, wanted you to want me." His grip tightened, something broken in his voice. "I don't know how to want anything without destroying it." Then his mouth was on mine, desperate and searching, and we tumbled into something that felt like falling and flying at once. His hands mapped my body like he was memorizing scripture. When he finally pushed inside me, I shattered, and he followed moments later with my name on his lips. The first time he'd ever said it like it mattered. His teeth found the junction of my neck and shoulder. The bite was pure instinct, pure alpha claiming, and I felt the bond snap into place like a lock finding its key. "Mine," his pheromones sang. Mine. I believed it. God help me, I believed it. Morning came too bright, too cruel. I woke in Kyung-tae's bed, our bed my heat-addled brain supplied, wrapped in his arms, his scent soaked into my skin. For one perfect moment, I let myself imagine this was real. Then I realized he was awake, staring at the ceiling with that unreadable expression, jaw tight, walls already rebuilding brick by brick. "Kyung-tae." My voice came out small. He didn't look at me. "This changes nothing. It was biology. Don't romanticize it." The words hit like a physical blow. You bonded me. Temporary. The mark will fade. Clinical. Detached. Like he hadn't just been inside me hours ago, whispering my name like a prayer. Heat-induced bonding rarely holds. Don't read into it. He extracted himself from the bed, from me, with mechanical efficiency. Grabbed his clothes. I lay there naked, still sticky with our combined release, watching him dress like I was already a memory he wanted to forget. "Kyung-tae, I have an early meeting." He didn't turn around. Clean sheets are in the hallway closet. The door closed with a soft click. Not a slam. Somehow that was worse. I touched the bite mark on my neck, felt the phantom warmth of his breath still lingering on my skin, and the truth crashed over me in waves. I was falling in love with someone who wished I didn't exist. And he just marked me as his, then walked away like it meant nothing at all. Chapter 6. Fractured Truths. He could still taste lavender on his tongue, and he hated himself for wanting more. 3 days. Kyung-tae had stayed away from the penthouse for 3 days, sleeping in his office, showering in the executive gym, burying himself in acquisitions and conference calls until exhaustion became a kind of numbness. But the bite mark he'd left on Yeon-woo's neck haunted him. He could feel it like a phantom ache in his own jaw, the bond trying to complete itself, demanding acknowledgement. He refused. You bonded him. Partially. Dong-ael appeared in his office doorway on the 3rd night, nose wrinkling. I can smell it on you. What are you running from? Drop it. No. His friend closed the door, leaned against it. You marked an Omega in heat fever and then abandoned him. That's not you being cruel, Kyung-tae. That's you being terrified. I said drop it. What are you so afraid of? The question cracked something open. Suddenly Kyung-tae was 10 years old again, standing in his mother's bedroom, holding the note he'd found on her nightstand. Her handwriting, shaky from the pills already coursing through her system. Your father's Omega scent was a lie. They always lie. Don't trust their softness. It's a trap. I loved him and it killed me. Don't be like me, my son. Don't let them in. He'd found her body an hour later. Nothing, Kyung-tae said flatly. I'm afraid of nothing. Dong-ael's expression softened into something too much like pity. You're going to lose him. You know that, right? Whatever you think you're protecting yourself from, you're going to lose him, and it's going to hurt worse than whatever you're afraid of. Kyung-tae didn't answer. After Dong-ael left, he opened a bottle of whiskey from his desk drawer and didn't stop until the room spun. He shouldn't have gone home. Should have stayed in his office, slept off the alcohol on the leather couch. Instead, he found himself stumbling through the penthouse door at 2 a.m, drunk and unsteady. Yeon-woo was asleep on the living room couch, sketchbook open on his chest. Kyung-tae moved closer, vision blurring, and saw the drawings. The two of them, rendered in careful pencil strokes. Kyung-tae's hand in Yeon-woo's hair. Their bodies intertwined, tender and impossibly hopeful. In the margins, small notes in Yeon-woo's handwriting. What if he meant it? What if the bond is real? Something in Kyung-tae's chest cracked clean through. He sank onto the couch beside the sleeping Omega, whiskey making him reckless. Why do you have to make this so hard? He whispered, voice breaking. I wanted to hate you. I needed to hate you. Yeon-woo stirred, eyes fluttering half open, still caught between sleep and waking. Then why does your scent wrap around me like you're trying to keep me safe? The question was a knife between his ribs. Because it was true. Because even now, drunk and desperate, his cedar steel pheromones were curling around Yeon-woo protectively, contradicting every cold word he'd ever spoken. Kyung-tae jerked to his feet, stumbled backward. You don't understand anything. He fled to his bedroom, slammed the door, pressed his back against it like Yeon-woo might follow. But there was only silence from the other side. Alone in the dark, he finally admitted the truth he'd been running from. He was developing feelings for Yeon-woo. Real feelings. The kind that made his chest ache when the Omega smiled at something on his tablet. The kind that had him checking security feeds just to watch Yeon-woo sketch. The kind that terrified him down to his bones. Because loving an Omega had killed his mother. He pulled his mother's journal from the locked drawer of his nightstand. The one thing of hers he'd kept. Flipped to the final entry, dated the day before she died. I loved your father so much I forgot to love myself. I gave him everything and kept nothing. Don't make my mistake, Kyung-tae. Don't lose yourself in someone else's scent. He closed the journal, jaw set with grim determination. I won't, he promised her ghost. I won't. Even if it meant pushing away the one person who'd ever made him feel human. Chapter 7. The Confession Under Rain. Love shouldn't feel like drowning, but with him, I couldn't tell the difference. A month after my heat, my body started whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. Nausea that hit in waves, turning my stomach at the smell of coffee Kyung-tae brewed each morning. Exhaustion so profound I'd fall asleep at my desk mid-sketch. Scent sensitivity, so acute that the alpha pheromones from strangers on the street made me dizzy. I knew before I took the test. But seeing those 2 pink lines made it real. I was pregnant, carrying Kyung-tae's child. The biological proof of our bond, growing inside me despite every suppressant, every cold word, every moment he'd pretended I didn't exist. Panic and joy warred in my chest. I pressed a hand to my still flat stomach and felt something fierce and protective bloom there. Mine, my Omega instincts whispered. Ours. You have to leave him, Jire said when I called, his face pale on my phone screen. Right now, Yeon-woo. He'll reject you both. You know he will. Maybe this will change him, I whispered, desperate. Maybe he'll finally see me. See us. And if he doesn't, I didn't have an answer. Kyung-tae's grandmother died on a Tuesday, her frail hand going cold in his while rain hammered against the hospice windows. Give that boy a real chance, she'd rasped with her final breaths, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Your mother's tragedy doesn't have to be yours. Don't let fear make you into a monster. Grandmother, I. Promise me. Her eyes, milky with age, pinned him. Promise me you'll try. I promise, he'd lied, because what else could he say to a dying woman? But the weight of it followed him into the rainstorm, into his car, pressing down on his chest until he couldn't breathe. He'd loved her. She'd been the only person who'd never looked at him with disappointment. And now she was gone, and he was alone with ghosts and guilt, and... The penthouse door opened before he reached it. Yeon-woo stood there, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to his face, eyes red-rimmed. He'd been outside. Searching. I heard, Yeon-woo said simply. I'm sorry. Something in Kyung-tae shattered. The walls he'd built so carefully, the armor he'd worn for 20 years. All of it crumbled under the weight of grief and this Omega's impossible kindness. He collapsed into Yeon-woo's arms in the foyer, and for the first time since his mother's death, he wept. Yeon-woo held him. Just held him, lavender rain scent wrapping around them both like shelter, his small hands stroking Kyung-tae's hair while he broke apart. I don't know how to do this, Kyung-tae gasped against Yeon-woo's shoulder. I don't know how to let someone in without it destroying me. You don't have to know, Yeon-woo whispered. You just have to try. Kyung-tae pulled back, looked at Yeon-woo's face, at the Omega who'd endured his cruelty with quiet dignity, who'd been searching for him in the rain, who smelled like home despite everything. You're the first Omega who makes me feel human. And it terrifies me. I know, Yeon-woo said, and there was forgiveness in his eyes Kyung-tae didn't deserve. I know you're scared. They kissed in the rain-soaked foyer, desperate and searching, Kyung-tae's hands tangling in Yeon-woo's wet hair. It tasted like salt and storms and second chances. And for once Kyung-tae didn't pull away. Didn't run. Just held this impossible Omega and let himself feel. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Yeon-woo's expression flickered with something weighted. I need to tell you something important, he started. Soon. There's something you should. Tomorrow, Kyung-tae interrupted, still lost in grief and this fragile new honesty. He pressed his forehead to Yeon-woo's. Let me just hold you tonight. Please. Yeon-woo hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow. They stood wrapped in each other while the rain sang against the windows, neither knowing that tomorrow would shatter everything. Chapter 8. The Gala of Shattered Glass. I should have known. Hope is just another word for heartbreak waiting to happen. The white hanbok felt like a wedding dress and a funeral shroud all at once as I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing invisible wrinkles. No Industries' annual charity gala. Our first public appearance as a married couple since the wedding. Kyung-tae had insisted I attend, and after last night, after he'd held me and kissed me and finally let me in, I dared to hope it meant something. I was going to tell him about the baby. Now, before we left, I found him in the living room, adjusting his cufflinks with that meticulous precision he brought to everything. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached. Kyung-tae. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Before we go, I need to tell you something. He looked up, expression guarded but not cold. Progress. I took his hand, he didn't pull away, and placed it on my stomach. Still flat, but carrying our future. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. Time stopped. His hand went rigid under mine. I watched his face cycle through emotions in rapid succession. Shock, wonder, fear. Then something shuttered closed, and the warmth from last night vanished like it had never existed. You planned this. His voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. To trap me. What? No. Panic clawed up my throat. It happened during my heat. You were there, you wanted. I wanted nothing. He yanked his hand away like I'd burned him. You Omegas are all the same. Use your heats, your scents, your tears, and now this, a fabricated pregnancy to lock me down permanently. It's not fabricated. Kyung-tae, please. Get ready. We're leaving in 10 minutes. He turned his back on me, on our child, on everything we'd almost become. And don't mention this again. The gala was a nightmare rendered in champagne and crystal chandeliers. I followed Kyung-tae through the Grand Hyatt ballroom, the same place we'd been married, feeling like a ghost. I tried to catch his eye, to plead with him silently, but he remained mechanical, distant, his walls rebuilt higher than ever. Please, I whispered when we had a moment alone near the silent auction tables. Just think about this. The baby is real. I would never. Don't. The word was a knife. Just play your part tonight and stay quiet. Then the speeches began. Kyung-tae took the stage to discuss No Industries' charitable initiatives, and I stood in the audience, nausea rolling through me, morning sickness or dread, I couldn't tell. A reporter from MBC called out during the Q&A. Director Noh, you recently married. How has that affected your perspective on family values? The room went quiet. Every eye turned to Kyung-tae. To me. I watched his jaw tighten. Watched something dangerous flicker behind his eyes, his mother's ghost, his father's betrayal, every trauma he'd ever weaponized against me. I'm glad you asked, he said, voice carrying across the ballroom, across the live broadcast to millions of viewers. It's time I address this directly. No, please. This Omega deceived me into this arrangement and now fabricates a pregnancy to trap me permanently. I publicly reject any bond, any claim, and any child allegedly carried. This marriage is a business contract, nothing more. The words detonated through the room. Gasps. Camera flashes. Kyung-tae's hand moved to his wedding ring. He pulled it off with deliberate slowness and let it fall. The small clink of gold hitting the stage echoed like a gunshot. My vision tunneled. The world tilted. Somewhere far away, I heard my own voice making a sound like a wounded animal. My scent turned acrid, bitter, wrong. Grief made pheromone, flooding the ballroom. Then the pain hit. Sharp. Tearing. Wrong. I looked down and saw red blooming across my white hanbok, spreading like a tragedy. The baby. Oh God, the baby. My legs gave out. I collapsed, distantly aware of screaming, of hands reaching for me. Through the haze of pain and shock, I saw Kyung-tae's face, horror dawning too late, his expression crumbling as he realized what he'd done. The cameras flashed like lightning as darkness pulled me under. Chapter 9. Ashes and Absence. The Omega's blood on the marble floor looked black under the stage lights, like ink bleeding from a broken pen. Kyung-tae stood frozen on stage while chaos erupted around him. Medics rushed forward. Someone screamed for an ambulance. Cameras kept flashing like obscene lightning. Yeon-woo lay crumpled in a pool of spreading crimson, white hanbok ruined, his lavender scent gone acrid and wrong. The baby was real. The thought crashed through him with devastating clarity as paramedics lifted Yeon-woo onto a stretcher. The baby was real, and I just killed it on live television. At Seoul National University Hospital, Kyung-tae paced the emergency wing like a ghost, still in his blood-spattered suit. A doctor emerged after an eternity, expression grim. Miscarriage at 8 weeks. Severe physical trauma, compounded by extreme psychological distress. He's stable now, but the doctor's eyes held contempt. I saw what you said. On the broadcast. Before Kyung-tae could respond, Ji-rae burst through the doors and slapped him across the face with such force his head snapped sideways. You killed your own child. The Omega's voice shook with rage. Monster. You're a fucking monster, and I will make sure my brother never sees you again. Security escorted Ji-rae to Yeon-woo's room. The door closed. Kyung-tae was barred from entering. He sank into a waiting room chair, numb, and replayed his words on the news footage playing on loop across every screen. This Omega deceived me. Fabricates a pregnancy. I publicly reject any bond, any claim, and any child allegedly carried. Allegedly. He'd said allegedly. But it had been real. Yeon-woo had been carrying his child, their child, and he'd called it a lie in front of millions. Had ripped off his wedding ring while his Omega husband bled out their future. Hours later, a nurse informed him coldly. The patient discharged himself against medical advice. He's gone. Kyung-tae returned to an empty penthouse 3 days later. Yeon-woo's things were gone. His clothes, his art supplies, the small touches that had made the space almost livable. Only the sketchbook remained on the coffee table, left deliberately. Kyung-tae opened it with shaking hands. The final page showed an Omega cradling empty arms, tears falling like rain, lavender flowers wilting at his feet. Below it, in Yeon-woo's careful calligraphy, I loved you. Past tense. The news crucified him. Stock prices plummeted. Protesters gathered outside No Industries headquarters with signs reading, Omega abuser, and justice for Shim Yeon-woo. Social media exploded with outrage. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, board members demanding his resignation, investors pulling out, his entire empire crumbling. Dong Il found him a week later, drunk in his office, surrounded by empty bottles and search results for Yeon-woo that led nowhere. "I destroyed everything," Kyung-tae whispered, voice wrecked. "He was telling the truth, and I called him a liar in front of the world. Our baby, he was carrying our baby, and I." He couldn't finish. Just pressed his palms against his eyes and tried not to see Yeon-woo's blood spreading across white fabric. Every lead went cold. Jirae had hidden him well. Kyung-tae hired investigators, called in favors, searched desperately, but Yeon-woo had vanished like smoke. In Busan, Yeon-woo stood on the pier at dawn, Jirae silent beside him, watching waves crash against weathered wood. The ocean stretched infinite and gray, matching the emptiness inside him. His scent had changed. No longer soft lavender and rain, but something sharp. Ozone before a storm, the electric charge of lightning about to strike. He touched his stomach, still tender from loss, and felt not grief but cold fury crystallize in his chest. "I will rebuild," he whispered to the sea, to himself, to the ghost of the child he'd lost. "And when I'm done, he'll know exactly what he destroyed." 6 months later, Kyung-tae's phone lit up with notifications. A new webtoon had gone viral overnight. The Alpha's Lie, an illustrated exposé of alpha-omega abuse, each panel devastatingly familiar. The cruel Alpha CEO. The Omega trapped in marriage. The pregnancy announcement. The public rejection. The blood. Kyung-tae read every chapter, saw himself in every cruel line, every cold word rendered in damning black and white. The artist's pen name, Lavender Ghost. His hands shook as the final panel loaded. An Omega rising from ashes, eyes burning with purpose, text reading. "You wanted me to disappear. Instead, I became unforgettable." Yeon-woo hadn't just survived. He'd become Kyung-tae's reckoning.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell us your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell for more stories.